Speaker on the list is Pakistan. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, co-chairs. Pakistan aligns itself with the statement made by the permanent representative of Italy on behalf of the Uniting for Consensus group. We welcome the submission of the revised intermediate model for Security Council reform by Liechtenstein, and also want to thank Ambassador Munir for his very cogent introduction of this model this morning. We acknowledge that the Liechtenstein model and the thinking behind it was put forward many years ago as an effort to bridge the differences between the Group of Four, the UFC, and other proposals. We are happy to participate in this discussion, although we believe, as you know, that consideration of the models is somewhat premature until we are able to build convergence on the 5 clusters for Security Council reform. Co-chairs, my remarks will focus on areas where we have some divergence and comments on the Liechtenstein model, but this is irrespective of the fact that in large measure there are convergences between the Liechtenstein model and the proposals submitted by the Uniting for Consensus as outlined by my colleague from Italy. Co-chairs, we welcome the recognition in the Liechtenstein model of the principle of periodic elections as an essential feature of any Security Council reform model. It is the best way to ensure the accountability of Security Council members. Elections imply that those who present themselves can either win or lose an election. That is the core of democracy. Therefore, those who are subjected to elections cannot be described as being on the council on a permanent basis. Even if eligible for immediate re-election, it is always possible, in our view, desirable, that there would be a rotation of member states in any periodic election. Secondly, and to ensure equity and broader representation for all member states, the tenure of the so-called permanent seats in the Liechtenstein model is too long, in our view, 8 to 10 years, particularly if the states serving on these seats have the possibility of immediate re-election. The UFC's offer for longer-term seats does not envisage such an extended term for states elected to such longer-term seats. International realities change quite rapidly, especially these days, and periodic elections can ensure the continuous reflection of such realities. But the period for such elections must be much shorter than 8 to 10 years to ensure reflection of such current realities. Third, the Liechtenstein model does not indicate the proposed size of an expanded Security Council. A number is given, 6, only for the seats that are supposed to be on a permanent basis. But there is no indication of the number of the non-permanent seats, which we have all agreed must be part of the expansion. The UFC's model, of course, proposes expansion only in the category of non-permanent elected members. And, and though consistent with the Liechtenstein's model, the UFC's offer of longer-term seats seeks to accommodate those who believe that they can make a larger contribution to peace and security. But the majority of the Council's members must be composed of the small and medium states which constitute the vast majority of the UN membership. Fourth, the geographical distribution of the seats to those who are supposed to serve on a permanent basis or on a longer-term basis must be equitable. Europe and North America are already overrepresented on the Security Council, with 3 permanent members, 2 non-permanent members from Western Europe and 2 from Eastern Europe. There should be, in our view, no additional seats for the West European, for the VIAG group, much less another seat on a permanent or longer-term basis. The representation of the developing countries must be enhanced and the historic injustice against Africa, Asia, and Latin America rectified in any acceptable model for Security Council reform. We believe that such requirements for equitable representation can be best achieved through regional representation as advocated by the Uniting for Consensus, by the African Group, by the Arab Group, and the OIC Group. Fifth, the Liechtenstein model does not address the issue of the veto head-on. Would those who serve on a permanent basis possess the right of veto? This is a core element of the African Group's demand as outlined in the Isolvini Consensus. If those members elected on a so-called permanent basis do not possess the right of veto, would the existing 5 permanent members continue to retain their veto rights? This issue will need to be resolved, hence the importance of reaching convergence on the 5 clusters. Sixth, we appreciate the attempt in the Liechtenstein revised model to accommodate the representation of cross-regional groups. The proposal mentions the SIDS and the Arab group, but it does not mention the OIC group, on which there is also convergence reflected in the Common Elements paper of the co-chairs. Moreover, the Arab group, indeed, even at present, enjoys continuous representation on the Council. Consequently, the proposal in the Liechtenstein model would merely formalize the existing arrangements. However, both the Arab and the OIC groups desire representation in any category of membership created in an expanded Security Council. The question arises whether cross-regional seats are to be available from those serving on the so-called permanent basis or longer-term basis, or from separate additional seats to be created in an expanded Security Council. Again, it seems difficult to determine this without convergence on the size and regional distribution in an expanded Security Council. Co-chairs, in the remarks made this morning's colleagues from Japan and the St. Vincent and Grenadines have asked for the rationale for representation of the Arab group. But while they recognize the rationale for the SIDS, they have asked for a rationale from the Arab group, which I think my colleague from Bahrain has outlined. I would also like to outline the rationale for the representation of the OIC. The OIC consists of 57 member states. It is the second largest international organization besides the United Nations. It contains important member states. Some of them would be covered within the African group. Some would be covered in the Arab group. But there are others who would not be covered within either of these groups. And these include all the states of Central Asia, Iran, Turkey, Indonesia, Bangladesh, Malaysia, Pakistan, and a few others. Their interest and contribution to international peace and security is important. Their interest in many of the items on the agenda of the Security Council, peace and stability in Asia, counterterrorism, peacekeeping. There are many issues on which these countries have very direct contributions and interests which must be represented in an expanded Security Council. Co-Chairs, seventh, we continue to question the purpose of the proposed review after 16 or 20 years. This should not become a device to postpone discussions and decisions that impinge on the equity of Security Council reform, whether it's on the issue of the veto or on the issue of more equitable geographic representation. The reform we agree now in this process must be a comprehensive reform which covers all issues outlined in the 5 clusters. Finally, co-chairs, we welcome most of the proposals for improving the working methods of the Council contained in Part 2 of the Liechtenstein model. Liechtenstein has already, and Liechtenstein and Ambassador Munir personally, have already made a significant contribution to promoting greater accountability of the Security Council's permanent members. And we believe that its proposals on working methods can further enhance the Council's accountability and efficiency, and we look forward to further elaborating and discussing these proposals in our deliberations in the coming weeks and months. I thank you, co-chairs.